Thank you very much, Michelle. Next up is Martin Levy from Hurricane Electric. What I like about what Hurricane Electric has done, and I think you started this with the V6, well, I started seeing this through the V6 platform, is how they were able to actually put some of this data out to show network adjacencies, how are networks actually interconnected around the world on V6. And then I actually realized you had more data than that on V4. And the question I had for Martin Levy is, how does this impact you as a carrier when it comes to making business decisions by looking at this data? So, Martin?
I only had one slide, so in fact I'll sit here and talk. Fully aware of the end of the, just hit the next page. So, I've presented at previous AFPIFs and actually at Afrinic meetings, showing some of our tools that we had built internally to the company and then decided to let loose on the world. These tools revolve around data that we can gather from many sources, including RIPE, including Oregon, anywhere that is public, and can give the end user a useful view of what the internet looks like as a global routed network. And because it's live data, because we deal with the internet routing tables, which are live, they're changing. They change every millisecond. They don't ever stay static. Overall, they increase over time because the internet is getting bigger. But measuring them provides some very valuable information. The first thing is that the internet only exists for networks that are actually connected to the internet. And think about that statement for a moment. We had conversations, and this is a repeat conversation. It's occurred here this week. It has occurred a year ago. It's occurred at forum around the world, where a policymaker or a regulator from a particular country, when I show them a web page that depicts all of the live networks in that particular country, will say, no. You're only showing 4 networks, but we have 8 or 9 networks, or some such number like that. And then I can go ahead and explain that if we cannot see the network, if the network does not route globally, it does not exist. And after a few iterations of this, you realize that there's a subtle difference in the world of the internet between the true or accurate or real-time measurement that one can do versus the general statement that something is nearly connected to the internet, or, for example, something is deployed but isn't routed properly. So there is this sort of complete mindset that we as a company have tried to push to people, that says you can send out a spreadsheet to all your operators in a particular country and say, please tell us what you're doing. Or you can simply, because this is the internet, go online and look at the real data. Because it is measured and it is presented, and there are many different places to go and see it. And there are many different vectors, many different dimensions that you can measure. The one that we've focused on more than anything else has been the BGP routing tables, so that we can really see how things are interconnected. But it goes a step further than that. We can also look and see where relationships, where adjacencies exist. You can easily see when peering is successful and that more and more interconnects occur between networks, let's say in a region or in a country. So we've presented all this in the past, and if you know, this is all available. You can go to our homepage and find the site, but it's easier just to go to bgp.he.net and have a look at the data there. But the key point is live data, real information, and not hearsay. It's interesting that Emil showed the L route graph from Serbia, because that would have, if I had wanted to show various fund measurements over time, that would have been exactly one of the graphs that I would have shown. But I would have shown it also for another reason. That so happens to be one root instance that was installed in one internet exchange that serviced not just networks in that country, but in fact networks around that region, because that internet exchange had in fact become quite useful for telcos out of other countries around that region. So it benefited actually a very large populace. Although we only saw one measurement from one person's home, it was a very valuable measurement. And literally, the moment that the L route server was installed and powered up, and then configured by a network engineer, and then added to the peering matrix, then that return on investment, that improved bandwidth showed up for a large number of users. Now, without mentioning the country, and without mentioning the internet exchange, and without mentioning the backbone, and without mentioning anything like that, except to say it was a country in Asia, so it wasn't in this region. That's actually the key point. So that's what I really wanted to make. There are cases where you see a root instance installed and you don't see the net result that we saw on that graph. Again, we go down to the practical side of this. If we aren't going out there and actually measuring the net result, what was said was a root instance has been installed at an internet exchange in a major country, and this is a good thing. Well, it actually turns out that statement was good except for that last point. No one had gone out and seen whether the routing was complete, and the measurement of that would have been a graph like a graph from a ripe atlas probe, because it would actually have shown no effect, no change, no nothing. Because it isn't just about installing and connecting. It's also about going out into looking at many, many distant locations, and the ripe atlas probe is a good example of being able to do that, and actually see that there is a positive effect. In that particular case, it took many months before the routing was fixed. The Serbian case is actually literally a couple of hours, exactly the way you'd expect it to be. So being able to measure what you do versus just say you've done it is also a key part of that. I think that's all I'm going to talk about today. My previous AFPIF slides I know are online, and they cover sort of some of the details of this in a much longer timeline. So I think this is enough for me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.